Hello and welcome to another Crack a Pack episode. I hope you all are doing absolutely fantastic today. I am doing very well. Today we are opening up a pack of Fate Reforged. This is obviously not the most high valued set in the world, but there are still quite a few cards like Ugin and things like that that would be very exciting to get. Hopefully we do, but of course we will also go through this as if it is a pack one pick one scenario. And so we will hopefully be able to determine, if I can get it open, what our first round draft pick would be if we were actually drafting this set. So as such, we will go through every card. Our first one here, Ethereal Ambush. It's an instant for 3, a green and a blue. You manifest the top 2 cards of your library. So if you don't know what manifest is, it's specific to this set. You manifest a card, you put it onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature, turn it face up at any time for its mana cost if it is a creature card. So basically it was very similar to Morph, if anybody remembers Morph from back in the day. This card in particular, it's fine. It's a 2-for-1, which is cool. I mean, you're getting 2 creatures for the price of only 1 card, which I like. It's also at instant speed, which means you can do that as a combat trick or as a surprise block or something along those lines. Excuse me. I like all of that. But it is pretty expensive and it is 2 color, which means you're going to be forced into multiple things right off the bat that I don't really like. Now, granted, during this set and during this block as a whole, the cons were a big thing. It was 3 color stuff anyway, so it's not too difficult to actually splash for 2, even 3 colors, but I tend to stay open more often, especially in the early picks, so I'm not as sold on a card like this. Abzan Advantage is an instant for 1 and a white. Target player sacrifices an enchantment, and then you bolster 1. So if you don't know what that does, choose a creature with the least toughness among creatures you control and put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. I find that this is not the best. Enchantments, generally speaking, you're not going to find as many of them in Limited. That doesn't mean you won't find them. This is certainly good for sideboard tech, but generally speaking, it's not going to be the most prominent card type that you find against a general opponent, and so for that reason, you will most often find that if you main deck a card like this, it will be a dead card. That regulates this mostly as a sideboard card. However, it is a very good sideboard card. It's great to have against a deck that does run enchantments, and so for that reason, I do like this card, but definitely not first pick, definitely a later pick in the pack. If you're in white and you need some enchantment sideboard hate, definitely pick this up. Refocus is an instant for 1 and a blue. Untap target creature and draw a card. Pretty straightforward card here, not too much to this. It is technically kind of used as, I suppose, a combat trick. If your opponent swings in after maybe you've attacked with something, you can untap your creature. You also draw a card, which is nice. This works very well with Prowess, which was very potent in this block, I would say. Basically anything that you play that has Prowess gets a buff from any non-creature spells that are played. I don't remember if it's non-creature, if it's instant or sorcery. Hopefully we'll get something there that we can show that off, but this definitely would trigger that, in which case it gets a buff. It's also able to then surprise block and you draw a card. So there's a lot of high potential for a card like this. However, it doesn't really help in a winning position. It's fine in a winning position because you can surprise block or do something like that, but if you're already winning the game, this doesn't really get you any further to winning the game. It's just kind of there. It draws you a card, which is nice. So it will always have a place to play it, but it won't necessarily be at its best at the majority of the time that you would play it. And so for that reason, I'm not super interested in it. Douse in Gloom is an instant for 2 and a black. It deals 2 damage to target creature and you gain 2 life. This is exactly the kind of card that I would love to have. Removal in any circumstance is great. It will always be good because you will always find creatures. And yes, I say always because 99% of the time in Limited, every deck is going to at least run 1 creature or at least a few. So I do find that removal is at a premium. I would definitely want this over anything else that we've already got so far. Will of the Naga is an instant for 4 and 2 blue, which is expensive, but it does have delve. So each card you exile from your graveyard while casting this spell pays for 1 generic mana of this spell. So you can actually get this down to only 2 blue if you delve 4 cards out of your graveyard. You tap up to 2 target creatures, and those creatures do not untap during their controller's next untap step. Very good tempo play for sure. Being able to tap down 2 creatures and then leave them tapped down for an extra turn is pretty big, especially if you're swinging in with like a blue-white flyers deck or a prowess deck or something like that where you can really start stacking some damage pretty quickly. That being said, it is just a tempo play. I wouldn't necessarily pick this up super early. If I'm in the deck, it's probably good to have 1 of these, maybe even 2, depending on the build of your deck. But in general, not super exciting. It's just a really good tempo play. Lightning Shrieker is a 5/5 for 4 and a red. It has flying, trample, and haste. And then at the beginning of the end step, its owner shuffles it into his or her library. Dragons were a big deal in this set, so there is a little bit of synergy there just in general I want to talk about off the bat. But on top of that, this is a 5/5 with flying, trample, and haste. That's great. Now, obviously, you do have to shuffle this into its owner's library at the end of the turn. That kind of sucks. Obviously, you don't really want to have to do that. You want to keep this out as long as possible. For that reason, I don't actually know that it's better than Dowsing Gloom. I do think that this is very much a big, swingy, awesome threat, but it doesn't stick around. It's only for a turn. And so for that reason, I feel like it's probably not quite as good as the Dowsing Gloom, but I am going to put it in that pile for now, and we'll see where we end up. Sandstep Outcast is a 2/1 for 2 and a white. When it enters the battlefield, you choose one. So you put a 1/1 counter on the Outcast, or you put a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield. So this is actually just a really good 3-drop in my opinion because it gives you options. So obviously at probably the worst, it could be a 3/2 for 3, which isn't amazing, but it's fine. But I think more often than not, I would rather put a second creature out and get a 2-for-1 off of this no matter what by having a 1/1 white spirit token with flying. Not only that, this also works very, very well with Bolster because spitting out that token means it's probably going to be the thing with the least toughness, that and the Outcast, obviously. And so bolstering that up later in the game just means that you've got a flying threat on the battlefield for already doing what you would normally be doing, which is just playing a creature anyway. So a lot of upside to a card like this. I don't think it's better than the other 2 cards that we have necessarily, but I do think that this is a very, very solid 3-drop, one that I would definitely want in a white deck. Smoldering Afreet is a 2/2 for 1 and a red, and when it dies, it deals 2 damage to you. I don't really like this card. I think it's honestly not as bad as people would probably think. That 2 damage to you, excuse me, is obviously a downside, but it is a 2/2 for 2, and that's just kind of playable no matter what. I would run this in a red deck if I just needed some curve consideration, and I really needed a couple 2-drops. This is a perfectly fine card to slip in, but it doesn't have a big upside. It is just a 2/2 for 2. So it's fine. It's not great, not very exciting at all. Hunt the Weak is a sorcery for 3 and a green. You put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, and then that creature fights target creature that you don't control. So this for green is very much a kill spell. It's a very good one at that. Counters in general are very, very good with the green deck. Bolster is very, very important there. But being able to put a 1/1 counter on it and then get rid of, ideally, a threat on the opponent's side of the field is fantastic. I would prefer, because this is so specific, to have stronger creatures kind of already drafted and already established as my deck archetype before pulling a Hunt the Weak, but this is very, very premium removal in that deck. So it would depend on the stuff that I had already picked up that I would want to get this card. I don't want to first pick it, generally speaking, but it is still very, very good. Marty Runemark is an enchant creature for 2 and a red. The enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has first strike as long as you control a white or a black permanent. Here we're seeing the cons, really, really show their colors. This is obviously based around Mardu, which is white, black, and red. Very, very strong, very aggressive archetype. A lot of really, really cool mechanics like dash, things like that were in that con, and I really like it. However, I tend not to like enchant creatures. You guys know this. It opens yourself up for a 2-for-1. There are a lot of instances where they're very, very good, but if that creature gets removed, they've now removed 2 cards for the price of only 1. And I don't like opening yourself up to that. That's not to say that these are bad. It's just that's not my play style. I tend to shy away from that, and so I would not be super interested in this card. Oops. Our first uncommon here is Orc Sureshot. It's a 4/2 for 3 and a black, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, target creature an opponent controls gets -1/-1 until the end of the turn. This is an absolutely great card. So it's a 4/2 for 4, which is a little below average in terms of toughness, but is still there on the power, so it's going to be able to block, and it probably at least trade off with some things. But honestly, that's not what you're looking to do with this card. You're kind of just wanting it to sit on the battlefield while you play a bunch of creatures. If you play a bunch of creatures, you start stacking up these -1/-1 until the end of the turn things. You can start dealing with some big stuff pretty quickly if you've got just a ton of small, like low to the ground creatures that you can start playing out. It really rewards a go wide strategy, which I love. And so honestly, so far, I think this is the pick. There's just so much upside with a card like this that it's very hard to pass up. Ruthless Instincts is an instant for 2 and a green. You choose one. Target non-attacking creature gains reach and death touch until the end of the turn. You also untap it. Or target attacking creature gets +2/+2 and gains trample until the end of the turn. This is just a really good flexible combat trick. It works on defense, it works on offense, it works kind of anywhere that you want it to. I like it for that reason. However, it is still just a combat trick. That be it, a very good one. I would probably want to pick this up in a green deck, but I'd really want to be in that green deck first, and so for that reason, not interested in first picking it. Excuse me. Shockmaw Dragon is a 4/4 for 4 and 2 red. It has flying. When it deals combat damage to a player, it deals 1 damage to each creature that player controls. Ooh, that's pretty good. So not only is this an evasive threat on its own, regardless of anything else, it is a 4/4 flyer for 6. Which, yes, is a little below on that 6 average. You'd probably want it to be more like a 5/5 or something like that, or a 5/4, but it's really not that far below average. Late game, it's still going to be able to get in a good bit of damage. But not only that, this also then starts to pick off a lot of the low ground creatures and make combat very, very hellish for the opponent. Because even if you swing in with a ton of stuff, they're now having to add 1 damage to every creature that they have if they can't block this. So I really like this card. I think that it's better than the Sureshot. I want to say that. It's very, very aggressive, which I like. I'm not 100% that it is better than the Sureshot, so I'll keep it here for now and we'll see what we get. Ooh, okay. Love this card. So Monastery Mentor is a 2/2 for 2 and a white. It has prowess, so whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +1/+1 until the end of the turn. That was that prowess mechanic that we were talking about. It is non-creature spell, not just instant and sorcery. But whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you also put a 1/1 white monk creature token with prowess as well onto the battlefield. So this is what's known as one of the best token generators in my opinion. This card single-handedly took over some old school formats and things like that because it is so powerful. We see Young Pyromancer do the same thing. It's just token generators in general are very, very good because not only do they allow you to go wide and do very, very crazy things, they also allow you to block effectively no matter what, because you can chump block and it doesn't really matter. You can just start spitting out more tokens. So I love this card. I definitely think this is the pick. We do have a Scored Barons here, which is just a land. They enter the battlefield tapped. You also gain a life, and then in this case it taps for white or black. There's obviously a full cycle of these that we could talk about, but I think it's a pretty clear Monastery Mentor here. Shockmaw Dragon as well as the Orc Sureshot are both fantastic cards. I would absolutely love to have them, but I think it's hard, very difficult for me to pass up on the Mentor. Obviously, one thing that I do want to mention about this one, in Limited, you're more creature-based a lot of the time, and so it's a little bit weird to pill something like this that's based around spells, but the whole Jeskai clan, or con, or however you want to say it, is very much focused on that spells matters, like prowess kind of mechanic. And so it's very easy in this set in particular to actually pull a lot of instant sorceries, non-creature spells in general, to make that prowess mechanic good. So I do think there's legs for this. I think this is a fantastic card. It's definitely my pick. Feel free to disagree in the comment section below. But if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like or a comment down below. And as always, please make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of our awesome content. But with that, I'm going to get out of here. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next Crack a Pack episode.